What do you guys think? Regen braking, yes or no? So just got done watching the Grin video, and there were some really good topics and points that he made, and he brought up some good points in terms of how a lot of people are against it and just simply don't hook up the brake switch. So some of the key points here he's bringing up is that the gains are too small. It only makes sense with cars, right? So the weight, the mass going when you're hitting the brakes just isn't enough to really regenerate enough power to be worth it, right? The next is not worth the extra cost, that the additional cost in doing this isn't worth it. I guess maybe upgrading components. The batteries can't handle it, and way better to just freewheel and have no drag. So I'll just go from the top here on a couple different things. The gains are too small. We're actually going to go test that today, so that's the whole point of this video. We're going to go for a little cruise, and we're going to use Grin Cycle Analyst to measure the amp hours generated from regen braking. This device has the ability to do that. Not worth the extra cost for me, and for most people that have a hub motor. This really doesn't work for mid-drives, but if you have a hub motor, it's just a matter of hooking something up you may already have, or adding a brake cutoff, which is about 20 bucks tops. So not really quite sure what the weight or any of that is. Batteries can't handle it. I mean, your batteries can, right? Because they can be charged. So what you need to do is just figure out the safe limit for your BMS and what it can handle, and then just program that into the regen. So every regen has a certain percentage that it applies when you're hitting the brake. That's how much energy will go back into the battery. So you can set this parameter to be safe for your pack. So I would say almost every controller that has regen braking has some sort of ability to do this. And the ones that don't have a very low amount of regen to prevent any issues. And then way better to freewheel and have no drag. Again, I guess maybe if you're on a competition road bike where you're freewheeling and pedaling, but I would say for most people here, we're using the bikes electric most of the time, and a little bit of freewheeling that we would normally do isn't a big deal. And really the freewheeling still is just fine. You can actually use in some controllers virtual freewheeling to get the same effect. So with technology and some tuning, you may not even have this be an issue at all. So really going down here, we need to figure out how much amp hours. It doesn't cost anything extra for most people. Every battery can handle some sort of regen, and the drag and freewheeling isn't applied to almost anybody that has a 1500 watt hub or larger, so kind of a moot point. So let's go out there, let's power up a Cycle Analyst, we'll reset it, we'll go over that, we'll go over how it will record that, and go out and actually test it and see what we make for amp hours and put this myth to the test. So maybe get a little myth buster action going on here. Is regen So what we'll go over now is two different types of regen braking systems. So here we have our e-grom build, and then here we have our Super 73 build. And although they both have regen, they both have it in a very different fashion. So we'll hop onto the e-grom first. Yes, I know I'm mounting it from the wrong side. So this bike here, you see, you got the stainless steel brake line. This goes to a master cylinder. So as you can hear, it does have a switch. The switch actually only runs the brake light. The actual line goes off to a T, and one of those T's goes to a pressure sensor. What that pressure sensor does is takes the pressure and translates it to a 0 to 5 volt signal. That 0 to 5 volt signal goes into the ECU and then modulates regen. So this bike has up to 100 amps of regen, meaning that it'll charge up to 100 amps at max when I hit the brake, and that will do it based upon how much brake input I give. So if I apply half the brake, and that's 500 PSI worth of braking, it'll apply half of that amperage. So it gives me a real one-to-one feel. So very little bit of brake, a very little bit of regen, a lot of brake, a lot of regen. It's actually enough to lock the tire up. So that's the one system. This is more complex. This is probably what you'll find on a motorcycle, since it's going to be able to hold and charge more amperage on the regen itself.
You could do a setup like this on an e-bike, absolutely. Just be a little bit more costly, but it's obviously very possible. You would need hydraulic brakes for this. Now, the other setup that you can do is what I have on this bike here. The brakes are a little bit different. So here it's the right side. You'll notice I have a cable brake here, and that's because I rely on the ReGen to do all the braking, and the cable brake is just there as a supplement brake. So when I squeeze this, this has the switch. So this is just an on-off switch. So as soon as it hits the contact point, it's going to apply 50 amp. Oh, up to, well, on this bike right now I have it at 25. I've varied how much amperage I've gone. I've gone up to 50, which is just a little bit too much. If I'm doing a lot of high-speed riding, that's kind of where I'm at. And if it's more low speed, about 10 to 15 is really good. And if you want a happy medium, about 25. So as soon as you're hitting that crossover point, it's applying it, which can be a little bit much if you're at real low speed. So if you're at 10 miles an hour and you hit it, it's going to be a little bit, too much braking, like you're really slamming the brake on. And that's when the system with the variable voltage comes into play, so you're getting variable assist. So it's a little bit more crude like this, but honestly, once you find a number and you dial it into your specific liking, you really kind of don't need to mess with it. You're not always looking to have, when you touch the brake, to have it lock up. So if you're somebody that cruises at 10 to 15 miles an hour, wants ReGen, you're going to dial it in for that. If you're somebody that's cruising 50 miles an hour, you're obviously going to want more braking power, so you can dial that in. On more specific and fancy controllers, you can actually set how many phase amps and battery amps it's producing based upon the ReGen. So you can get like an initial torque and then how much it's actually charging. So you can get a little more specific depending on which controller you're using. Not every controller can do the variable voltage. Some just are not capable of that. This is an ASI Bach. You can do it on the 855s as well. I'm not sure which all specific controllers have it, but many of them do. And this one is a Votool, and it does not. I'm actually trying to figure out a way to do it right now, which I think we might have. So if that works, I'll update. But more specifically, these are the two types. It depends on your controller, and that's what you need to know. So we're going to go out now and actually test it. And I'll start a separate video for that. So before I clear anything here, I'm going to go over and just look. So this was reset my last little ride. So on my last ride, I went out and used 5.42 amp hours with 8.57 miles. I was out obviously vlogging it, having fun, but this is a good opportunity to show what ReGen was working, what I was able to achieve last time, and some of the other data that it records. So this is untouched, this is what was in there. So we're just going to go through this together. So this main screen, that's my current battery voltage, which I did charge it, so that's why it's there. Again, this is the mileage, and it cycles through to the amp hours used. This was on my last charge. Until I reset this trip, these are the last parameters. That's the live kilowatts, and that's the live speed. We can cycle over. This screen has a lot of similar things. Here's a voltage, kilowatts, amp hours, but now it has amperage as well. So if you want to see the exact amperage. Again, this is a similar screen. This is watt hours, amps, excuse me, RPM from cadence, mile an hour, and then the voltage again. This is the watt hours and watt hours per mile, so you can kind of see your efficiency, which you can see I wasn't doing that great. Again, here, this is for pedaling. As you can see, I wasn't pedaling very much. So here's the value right here. So 4.5% of the battery, or the amp hours, were regenerated. So ReGen amp hours was 0.25 out of going 5.6. So not a huge percentage, but 4.5% of my trip was regenerated and put back into it. So a 5% increase in range just from using something that's already there and saving the brake pads, I would say is pretty good. And again, this is a situation where I was really beating on the bike. So we're going to go for a mild cruise and see what we come up with. All right, so I just finished resetting the cycle analyst to do this ReGen test. So as you can see, everything is zeroed out. We'll just cycle through everything here. As you can see, 0 ReGen amp hours, 0 forward. All right, also 0 amps. So what we're going to demonstrate here is a couple things. I have this controller set to not ReGen if the voltage is near 82. So until it's somewhere in the 81 volts, you're not going to see any ReGen. This is to prevent an overcharge and possibly ruin either the battery or turn off the BMS, which then could damage the MOS switch in the controller. So this is a little bit more on the technical side of tuning, which we can make a video for later. But that's why you're going to notice it won't work at first, and then as we get into the ride, you'll notice that it will turn on once the voltage drops a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and take off now. Speed will be on the GPS there, so I'll just shut up and cruise. Bike's a little bit noisy right now. I have a bad bearing on the steering. It's kind of not bad, but just dry. Literally all of the riding I do is, I mean, you're going to see how close I am to the beach here. It's very close. You can go by. I don't think that car's seen me. It's weird that they didn't see me. Almost hit me and then beeped at me. Joys of being a bicyclist or e-biker. Just use the pass. This is Florida, so once you come in the state of Florida, you do not have to use directionals, and they automatically turn off on the cars. So that's why you didn't see that guy use a directional. They just don't work here. If you live in Florida, you know what I mean. If you visited, you definitely know what I mean. Morning. Beautiful day. So as you can see, now the ReGen is working, and it will continue to work now that the voltage is down. So we went 1.32 miles. We were cruising 40s there. We've used 0.67 amp hours. So let's just cruise. I know it isn't going to be very much, but so 0.03 amp hours. So again, about 4.7%. So it's pretty much what it's probably going to track as, since that's what we've seen before for data. But we're here, so might as well cruise, and it's very low tide, which makes for a really nice ride. So yeah, we're definitely going to cruise today. Good morning, brother. It's crazy. Not only, you know, do we love riding these things, but for whatever reason, when people see them, they always smile. to the so yeah, we've already hit 217 amps on that trip there, somewhere along the lines. So honestly, just gonna do a little pedaling. I have it set up pretty good, so we're pedaling at about 22. Now in a situation like this, obviously there's not much stop and go. There's really not going to be much amp hours, but once we come up to things like this, you'll start to see where when I use the brake, it will generate more. So the percentage is going down based upon this type of riding. But I mean, I don't know if you guys really are watching the video, but you'll notice earlier on in the video when I went to use the brake and there was no ReGen, the cable brake was very underperforming, and then now it's you know, better than a basic hydraulic brake. Did a little water crossing there. This bike is waterproof, but like I said, it's salt water, so I try not to just pop through it. It's always a good thing when your speedometer airs out. That's not possible. You guys caught me using the front brake a little bit. Bad. Not good for this video. That's the front. And what I'm going to do is, I guess I'm going to take the sidewalk back, and that will allow me to kind of have some stop and go situations. Yeah, the voltage is getting down. We're starting to get full use of the actual ReGen, which is really nice. So like I said, it's going to vary the power. It's not going to give us the full ReGen amperage. Like we could see, so yeah, we're only at 16 amps of ReGen right now, mainly because the voltage is still high in the pack and it's hitting that safety limit. And this is a part of the video that you could honestly skip. This is more just, I guess, a basic cruising part. You know, if you like watching e-bikes cruise along and you want to hear me talk about various e-bike stuff, listen. If not, skip. There'll be timestamps. But if not, you know, enjoy the views. It's definitely. So what you're seeing here is the high tide was in, now it's washed out, so you're kind of left with these cool little ponds here. Sometimes there's fish, but usually the birds lead them out pretty quickly, so in this situation there is none. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big pond right there. I mean, you know, if you wanted to chill right here, it's basically a little jacuzzi, and you'll find a lot of people do that. Another one right here, another one right there. And that was straight over the tire. Past my little Super 73 fender. Let's give the camera a wipe. All right. And of course, what would one of my videos be without a little pull? We got this nice little stretch here. I guess, you know what, let's just try to leave it on this screen. Maybe you guys will be able to see what it says here. I'll try to do that. It's gonna be kind of tough, but wheelie. I don't know if you guys were able to get that, but hopefully that was up there in power. All right. Oh yeah, there we go. We got some ReGen now. All right. So although the beach view is beautiful, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to torture myself and take the street back, well, the sidewalk, and I'm going to do this just to really kind of generate some amp hours on the brake, see if we can maintain that 5% on a trip like this. Again, your driving may not be like this if you're, you don't have as open an area, so. See what I mean? I'm gonna have to use quite a bit of brakes here. For anybody asking, that's not the bike lane there on the shoulder on this road. No, so there's no markings. Sorry guys, there's some situations that I just use double brake on them. That's just habit. I know for this video I should only be using the ReGen, but a rear brake. And it's worth noting, you could set it up that both brakes will offer you ReGen. However, to me, I'm a bike enthusiast. I want the bike to have a rear brake when I hit the rear and a front when I hit the front. Morning, brother. So this is probably more realistic than what somebody in the city would be doing, right? Kind of some pulls here and there and cruising or through the, just your local town. The beach is best case scenario, right? We all want to be at the beach. Maybe. I'm an introvert, so if I'm not on my bike, I certainly don't want to be at the beach. And as you can see, that does say bike lane. That's why it's moving. Thank you. You always got to look down when you're recording on a GoPro, because you never know when these things just will stop. But yeah, we're 14 minutes in. Right. Try to at least slow down for these side swings here. You never know with people. To say, man, there's a power level for everybody, and thank you, good morning. For a stock length Super 73, you probably don't want this much power, but if you get creative and you can find a way to extend it, this power right here is for the absolute adrenaline junkie. I really can't put into words. I mean, we're at 20 miles an hour here, and it will start to wrinkle the tire in the rear, and definitely wheelie. I mean, you have to understand, not only will it wheelie, but it'll power wheel. There you go, wheel up, not even full throttle, and we're at 20 something miles an hour, and that's not lifting up on the front suspension. The opposite, actually. I'm leaning forward. We're getting close to that 5-mile trip that we were on before, but just kind of wanted to simulate that. And since the first part of the video we didn't have any ReGen, I felt that was somewhat unfair. So we've circled back around here and are using the ReGen a little bit more. And if you've made it this far, you've actually stuck around for God knows what reason, you'll notice that we've essentially just made a huge circle. We went down the beach, then we went south, then we went east, west, west, north, and then out east. Yes, I know, I messed up. It's early. Not only have I not had my coffee, but this is me waking up. Bum, bum, bum. Don't have no tunes right now. YouTube will take my video down. So while I'm recording, no music, excuse me. God, what a beautiful morning. I just tell my boss I'm sick. Can't make it in, sorry. It's e-bike riding weather. Alright. And now, well, I definitely could stop this video back at the house. I think this is probably a much more fitting place to do so. So we'll do it here. So this is the breakdown. What did we come up with for ReGen? Was it worth it? Did we gain anything? Was it noticeable? So let's cycle through the cycle analyst, right? We're cycling through the data. All right, so in a normal situation, look at that. We actually were using about 10% ReGen in a more realistic situation where we were using the brake for stop and go versus just cruising down the beach. So 10%, that's awesome, right? We're 0.28 amp hours ReGened and we use 3. So if we were to go through an entire battery, that would, you know, be 3 hours generated, 3 amp hours generated in this type of scenario, right? 3 amp hours. I mean, that's an hour's worth of charging for free, and I'm not tearing down my brake pad. I think that's probably a win, and you could probably even use more ReGen. You know, you could realistically, depending on your situation and, you know, your weight, I'm only 190, so right, if you weigh a little bit more, you might have some more ReGen, and your driving habits might have some more ReGen. So I would say that based upon the data, it's 100% worth it, right? So a lot of people say it's not worth it. It is worth it. It's hard to argue with the facts. Do you want to be able to get 10% of your energy used back for free? So that's really one of the biggest things to consider when you're looking at adding the ReGen back to your bike. right? So we're increasing the braking capabilities, we're increasing our range, we're decreasing our brake usage, we're decreasing our rotor usage, so we're saving money, increasing brakes, and getting a better experience on the bike overall. So if you have it, hook it up. It's usually on almost every single controller. It's usually a 2-wire, and it's just an interrupt, right? So it breaks, the signal is connected right now, and you pull this lever, it disconnects and breaks the brake wire, and that's how it knows. So if you have it, add it. If you don't know how to add it, comment below and I'll do my best to try to help you add it to your bike.